All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another edition of Bees Biz Live. Before we start, though, we are a little bit distracted right now. We've just heard the news about the legend, Coach Beam, being rushed to the hospital after a shooting at Laney. We, at the Ballers organization, wish him and his family and all of our friends at Laney College the absolute best, and you all have our support. This is a surprising thing that just popped up as we were about to start this, and we just want to wish him well. And as we get underway here, the previous episode of this show, we talked a lot about the Ballers' introduction to the world and the announcement, and then at the end there was a bit of a cliffhanger where we started talking about Raimondi Park suddenly becoming an option. And I think that one thing that maybe people didn't quite see in the midst of all of the buildup and the rush to get Raimondi Park completed construction-wise was all the work that really took place behind the scenes. And I know you guys can really dive deep into all of that and the fears and the stresses that I will have you be reliving now. I appreciate you for that. But so yeah, team is introduced. It's presented that Raimondi Park is possible. Paul, your immediate thoughts?
Yes. So, at our announcement, Fred Morris from the Oakland Parks Department comes up to Bryan and says, would you like to play at Raimondi Park? And we talk about it, it's a hectic day. We talk about it afterwards. Bryan's like, some dude came up to me and said, do you want to play Raimondi Park? And I knew Raimondi Park pretty well. For folks in East Bay United Soccer Club, that's home soccer club. My daughter and son both played there. So I, knew it well, sort of been part of the family, but, people can't go around giving away parks. So I think it took a week or two to schedule the meeting. We get on the Zoom and we're like, so what's this thing about giving away a public park? And he's like, I'm Fred Morris of the Oakland Parks Department. Would you like to play Raimondi Park? And we're like, oh, this is real. This is a real conversation. This can actually go there. I think November 28th is when we came out to the, the world that we were announcing the team. And I think by December 21st, so less than a month later, we had our heart set on playing at Raimondi instead. And the reason why is, it is just such a deeply historic baseball park. It was named after Ernie Raimondi. He was a World War II hero, lost his life in World War II, but was a 16-year-old professional baseball player, one of the youngest professional baseball players in the country. Veda Pinson, Kurt Flood, Frank Robinson, that was their home Little League field. They played baseball there. It was just so deeply historic. And the idea that we can make a potentially permanent home at Raimondi became, utterly intoxicating. And at some point we had a meeting that called the Burn Your Boats meeting, where we gave up all backup plans, all other places. Our heart set was on Raimondi, and then it became about making it happen.
Bryan, what do you recall from that?
Yeah, the Burn Your Boats meeting. It's funny because there was like a little period there where we were parallel pathing, and those in the Oakland sports world know all about parallel pathing. So that was like our little internal joke that's what we called it. But Raimondi, like Paul said, instantly was appealing. And it actually went back to before Freddie Morris came up to me on November 28th, because that summer, we started building the Ballers project in June of 2023. And Oakland had issued an RFP for public-private partnerships with 3 parks: Raimondi Park, Oakport, and I can't ever remember what the third park is. Do you remember? Eastmont Park. And we were like, this is really interesting. We should explore this. And we actually were trying to get in touch with the city about it, and nobody was kind of giving us a clear answer. We were super interested in Raimondi and Oakport. Oakport we spent time there. We were like, yeah, we could build a ballpark here. It's right across from, right across from Oakland Coliseum. There's plenty of space, parking. The issue is it's right on the water, and we didn't learn. You can't build. You have to build. I think there's 100 feet off of the water. There's a conservation law about that, so that wasn't going to work. But Raimondi was still super interesting. So that was why, like Paul said, when Freddie came up to us, we were like, "Are you messing with us?" Because we were like, "We've been trying to get in touch with you guys to talk about this." And then once it started, and Paul actually just forwarded me and Casey an email that he had written in December that's like, okay, here's the list of everything that we have to do. now that we're like locked in on Raimondi, it's a really big list. And it was also like, here's the 47 steps to get to a June 4th opening day at Raimondi Park. And if any one of those steps doesn't happen in sequence and successfully, the whole thing is going to fall apart. It was like a house of cards.
Yeah, and there's a pretty heavy price tag in that email. I read it, and I was stressed out just reading it, and I already know that we're the reigning champions that have been playing there for 2 years. It was still stressful to go back and read that. Let's take a look really quick here. This is what Raimondi Park actually looked like before you guys started work on the ballpark. As you can see, it had some swamp-like qualities, to say the least. So this was a heavy lift.
A lot of goose poop.
Yeah. Which by the way, it has some of that right now again. But yeah. So when you say before, like that was like mid-March. That wasn't like years before. That was like,
mid-March.
That was mid-March.
Months before opening day.
It's June 4th. And it looked like a swamp. No one had played Little League there for 5 years plus. None of the lights were working. Obviously the diamond had grown over. There were no stands. There was no batter's eye. There was no video scoreboard. There was, historical field and a vision. And then we got to work kind of making it happen. I think the burn your boats meeting, like this is what we're going to do. We have to make it happen in January. And so we made that commitment to do it. We worked very quickly with the city of Oakland. They were a great partner, despite what people say about not being able to get things done in Oakland. Like our experience was, we could. And in mid-March, we were able to have a right of entry agreement. We were still working on some, all the long-term details, but we were able to start working on the ground conditions. And then we got all of our building permits in the month at May 1st. And then everything built above ground in Raimondi Park was built above ground from May 1st to June 4th. June 4th was opening day. And as Brian said, there's everything was like a little bit of a house of cards. Like everything had to go exactly right. We had no flex in the project plan, no ability for, things not to come together exactly perfectly. But, obviously 2 years in, it did. It's still very stressful. It's still it was certainly the most intense, professional period of my life. I got very sunbaked from walking around at Raimondi Park in the month of May as we were directing construction and traffic and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at this video too, this time lapse of basically the build of the field itself, the stands, we're talking March 29th to June 4th, which was opening day. But one of the last shots in that video, you can see the press box is basically like a fabricated shipping container. It was still on the street. It wasn't even up in position, wired, ready to go. And I think that is a major point of stress. But before we do that, because I think a lot of people saw that, go back to what you were just saying, because I think it's very notable that like one major like public challenge, one missed permit, one missed deadline could have sunk the entire existence of the Ballers, because as you said, you did burn the boats and this was not a parallel path. I remember sitting down with you, Paul, actually, I didn't work for the Ballers yet, but we were at Athletic Club Oakland and you told me about Raimondi Park for the first time. And I was like, wow, like restoring a public park, making that your ballpark, it's the coolest idea ever. How the hell do you think you're going to get that done in time? I remember thinking that, and I remember calling Bleacher Dave, actually, David Peters, shortly after that, and just getting his opinions, and he's like, this would be awesome. And then you guys were just off to the races. But I want to play a quick clip. This was from the parade, and it struck me what Carol Fife said, because I would like to hear more about some of the things that almost derailed this project. But first, let's start with this clip.
If I'm being honest, there was a lot of skepticism when this project first started. There were actually people that were trying to kill the project. I had to go to a meeting where moving this project forward would not have happened had I not gone to that PrAC meeting. They said because there was no written report attached to the presentation that was given about bringing the Ballers to West Oakland, a place that has been divested from for generations. If we wouldn't have been able to pass it that day, there would have been no construction.
So you can't break ground on this park until you have all the approvals. You can't even get the approvals if there's prominent public challenges. So you guys did a ton of work in the community, speaking to people and having meetings and all of these things. But what was Councilmember Fife talking about there, and what were some of the steps that could have happened that may have sunk this entire project?
Yeah, so we had no flex in the timeline. There's, kind of two things could have happened that would have derailed us. So, there's Oakland has a Park and Recreation Council meeting that has to approve certain activities in the public park. What Councilmember Feist was referring to was one council meeting where we needed to get a certain approval. Again, no flex in the project plan, and just by administrative error, the report recommending doing this thing wasn't attached to the presentation, and so the council members wanted to vote, but they didn't know whether they were legally allowed to vote for something because it wasn't part of the public record. Fortunately, we have had an amazing partner in Sharita who works at Lighthouse Advisors. And if you're trying to do anything in the city of Oakland, you should work with Sharita and Lighthouse. But she had come from working for the city and she knew the rules. It turns out that if you read something into public record, it's just as good as if it's attached to the report. Councilmember Fife was there. All the commissioners agreed. And then poor Freddie Morris from the Parks Department, who didn't have his reading glasses on, had to read the 3-page report in front of the crowd in order for it to be entered into public record, and then they had to vote on it. So that was one of the hurdles that could have gone wrong. Another was we had no time for an appeal. There's 408,000 people in the city of Oakland. If any one of them had appealed the building permit, there's an appeal process. We ultimately would have been approved post-appeal, as long as there wasn't a lot of public outrage. But we didn't have the 2 weeks extra time for there to be appeal.
Wow.
At one point in time, there was, one gentleman who issued an email to Oakland, objecting to it. It turned out that he hadn't been in town for some of the community meetings that we did, and he just had some misconceptions around the project. So it wasn't that he was really against it; he just didn't fully understand it. We had done so much community stakeholder engagement that we knew the landlord at the art studio that he rented, and were able to have the landlord at the art studio that we rented, who is a big supporter of what we're doing, go and talk to him personally, explain why it was important, offer ourselves up as available if there's any questions, and he withdrew his complaint. But literally, had there been one complaint, one misfiling, one miss thing, opening day wouldn't have happened.
That's wild. That's absolutely wild. One complaint. And that's why it's so important to do the work you did in the community. And I remember when I checked in with David Peters about Raimondi, one of the things that he said that I thought was really encouraging is that, it is for soccer and football, and people come and go frequently. So they're used to a lot of ingress and egress, and it was a place that made a ton of sense. And I think both historically, it made sense, and just made practical sense. It was a perfect spot to do this. And Bryan, as you dove in, because I know you made most of the videos, the great historic launch videos, what were some of the things that really jumped out to you and made you fall in love with this ballpark site?
I mean, like Paul said, it really was the history. I think in the 1960s, the Oakland Tribune said that quietly Raimondi Park had produced more future MLB stars than any other field in the entire country. And that's true, right? And we've gotten a chance to get to know some of those some of the relatives and the children and grandchildren of some of the great players that have come through there. So it started to feel like, we're the new kids on the block. We're trying to do something historic. And so to play in a place that was a sacred space, that had a real baseball legacy that we could start to become the stewards for, that felt really important to us. If you come to our ballpark, you'll see that, some of those folks that Paul mentioned, Veda Pinson, Kurt Flood, Frank Robinson, these guys are honored on murals that we've created around the ballpark. We've got one to, Vita Blue. And so I think that for us, once we locked in on Raimondi, we were like, this is going to be really hard, maybe borderline impossible, but we knew that it was the right decision once we started to do it. And I just want to circle back to the PRAC meetings and say one thing, which is that it was a lot of work. It was a pain to hold. It was weekly. We were holding every Wednesday night there was a PRAC meeting, but the beauty of it, and there was this sort of really valuable unintended consequence opportunity that presented itself, which is that we were literally crowdsourcing in real time the problems that we were going to have, and then also finding the solutions, because people were voicing their concerns. They were about parking, public transportation, and scheduling conflicts, the roads, noise, things like that. And so it really, to me, it was like, oh, like local government can actually work. There's a reason that there's this process. This process was actually incredibly valuable. And we found a lot of the people through those PrAC meetings that not only helped raise those concerns, but also helped us solve the problems.
Yeah. Now, it might have felt like PrAC was every week. PrAC only happens the first Wednesday of every month. We had our own
meetings were every week.
We had our own community meetings of every couple of weeks or so. And as Bryan said, it's like what we actually found was, we actually got the experience got to be better because of those meetings. So like one of the first things that got raised was, concerns about, parking and traffic. So we started to say, okay, what are ways that we can minimize parking and traffic? Well, let's make it super friendly for public transportation. And that led to partnerships with BART and AC Transit and additional AC Transit stops. Let's lean into biking. Biking is a environmentally safe, community-oriented way of getting to a ballpark. So we partnered with Bike East Bay to do a bike valet, which is now a big part of the bike culture so like ultimately the actual experience of the Ballers games got better because we did this community engagement. It wasn't just a necessity to make sure that nobody objected. It made the experience better, which, we were sort of saying themes like Built by Oakland before that, but that's when we really the concept of Built by Oakland really came to crystallize. Is like, this is going to be a team that's going to be built in partnership with the fans, in partnership with the community, because we were learning that that wasn't just a requirement to make sure that nobody objected. It actually made everything better. It made the experience better.
Yeah, and I talked in our rally at City Hall after the championship, before the mayor gave us the key to the city, that this is proof that public-private partnership can bear fruit and be successful. And there's the key. It's, oh man, that thing is so cool. And actually, it's kind of interesting. I wrote down something you said in a meeting maybe a week ago, Paul. You every now and then you rattle off these incredible gems, and I wrote it down because you said, "We're not here to save Oakland. We're here to prove Oakland never needed saving." And I thought that was just an amazing statement that you said in a meeting, and I wrote it down because this is proof. And the process that you're talking about, this is between January and March, right, where this is all taking place. And then you're building in March. This is a rush to get Raimondi Park built. We looked at the renderings. They were pretty cool. I saw Dylan Sesko in the chat, which I think is awesome because I'm actually going to show some video he shot, which is just incredible. Thank you, Dylan. This shot on opening day, June 4th, 2024, the Oakland Ballers, and this is the championship game right here that we're looking at, showing Raimondi in all of its glory, from the renderings to just these beautiful aerials of sold-out Raimondi Park. But as we went March to June, I remember, Paul, I ran into you. We did a tour of the ballpark one day. You kind of showed me where everything was going to be. I came back a week later, and it was like an entirely different place. So were you at all surprised with how just insanely fast these things took place once you put everything into play?
No, I mean, it needed to, right? So it was, May 1st, we get the building permits, June 4th is opening day. That's the project plan. It had to come together that quickly. It had to be 25% of a ballpark every month, every week, because otherwise we weren't going to make it. There's really cool advances in modular construction, so the bleachers came together kind of like Lego blocks. We did a modular construction for the press box, which I think we're going to get to because it was an exciting part of the project, and the dugouts, and so things came together, and they came together quickly, but it kind of had to come together that fast because we didn't have any time for anything slower. There was no, we had, 5 weeks to build a ballpark.
Yeah, and as you mentioned with that press box, and as we saw it just sitting there on the ground, and also Joe, thank you for echoing Paul's awesome quote there. If you have comments in the chat too, we'll try to save a little time to actually answer questions at the end of this, but we have a lot to dive into with the Raimondi Park subject. But keep firing off those comments. I'll keep showing them. I appreciate you all being interactive with us as we do this live.
It's fancy. You're getting fancy, Casey. You're doing all this technical stuff.
We're adding more and more bells and whistles as we get into this thing. But speaking of adding more and more bells and whistles, the press box itself pretty much got hoisted up into place. How long before the first game, Bryan?
I think it was wasn't it that morning?
No, it's 48 hours before opening day.
Oh no, it was internet. We didn't have internet that morning. Yeah, 48 hours before. So June 4th was a Tuesday. So Paul, you're saying it was Sunday, June 2nd?
Sunday, June 2nd, which, by the way, you jinxed us. We've never talked about this before, but you did an interview when you were talking about the Raimondi plan, and you're on TV, and they're like, so, June 4th opening day. When are we going to get done? And you were like, maybe June 3rd at midnight, which everybody laughed. It was actually really funny. It wasn't June 3rd in our project plan at the time. It was not June 3rd at midnight. We had a few days of extra time but it turned into pretty close to June 3rd at midnight. But the press box, the story on the press box is, it was the hardest part of the project. So 2 different companies, one does the modular bleachers, another does the press box. The 2 engineering teams couldn't agree about the right way to attach the one thing to each other. They were fighting with each other. We had no extra time for, the project plan didn't have time for engineering teams to fight with each other and not agree on what to do forward. They had to build a custom beam to connect the 2. The beam got stuck in storms in the Midwest at the time. Beam didn't get into place at the time. Press box got lifted 48 hours, and literally everything in the press box, all of the controls for the scoreboard and PA and pitch clock and everything that's in that press box, multiple human beings' jobs to operate during the time, all that got wired up in the last 48 hours before opening day. The engineers that we had do that were just they didn't go to sleep, and they were just outside the press box, chain smoking and going in. And then Brian was referring to this as the Wi-Fi, the last thing to turned on about 5 p.m. of opening day, and with the gates almost right when the gates opened. First pitch was at 6:35.
Yeah, and just to set the stakes for not having Wi-Fi, if you don't have Wi-Fi at a ballpark, very hard to run a video board, very hard to just have music, very hard to really do anything. Anything. I mean, it felt existential that we couldn't get Wi-Fi to work a couple hours before.
Of all the things, that's the thing. That's pretty funny because you're pretty nuked without it. Plus, you have to train all these people on how to use all this equipment that you're just installing, hours before the game. I remember showing up there. I was reporting live for ABC. And by the way, Paul, you can't blame me for anything I say on TV live. Who knows what I'm talking about half the time. But I showed up really early because I had to report live. My first hit was in the 4 p.m. news. And I remember walking in and some of the relievers were confused because the bullpens were still being finished. I remember they were still putting up string lights right outside where I was about to do my live hit. There was active work going on as we were approaching first pitch, and it was so fun to see and be a part of. And I remember at one point I took a stroll, and I saw you walking by looking very stressed, and I was like, Paul, what's it going to be like when you get that first "Let's Go Oakland" chant? And I think you looked at me and said, I think I'm going to cry. And that was about it, because you were all just moving all over the place. So as you got to that moment where gates opened, just take me through your headspace, each of you, because I can't even imagine what that was like. I was standing there watching it, but you guys were actually building it, and that must have been something else.
Well, Paul cried when he did the Let's Go Oakland.
Yeah, I always cry. This, by the way, we've talked about me crying at every single one of these things. It's
that's going to be a runner.
23 minutes in, we talk about Paul crying.
I mean, there was so much going on that day. It was such a whirlwind. I think we owned the high wheelers too.
So yeah, there's that whole thing,
right? And so that was very emotionally complicated. In a way that maybe we hadn't really fully wrapped our heads around. And I remember bringing them into the away locker room, which was, a converted public restroom and we had been scrambling for 24 hours to build lockers and furniture with fans showing up and helping us. And
Trish, that was cool.
Well, it was amazing. We had 100 plus just community members that came out and helped us build IKEA furniture, lockers, things like that, rewiring, lighting. And so, I think that part of it was that part of it was something that impacted me, I think, more than I expected. It's oh, okay, both of these teams, we're shepherding both of these teams, and it's a new stadium. All eyes are on us. There's a lot of expectations. But then once the game started, it really did feel magical. Like there was first of all, it was completely sold out, packed crowd. And it was just pure joy. And it just felt like it was like everybody wanted it and needed it. And people were incredibly hopeful. And it felt like the culmination of what had been, I think at that point, about a year exactly, almost to the day of work for us. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Opening day 2024, big thumbs up.
It was pretty great. We lost the game. Turns out
we did lose the game.
That didn't matter so much. Yeah, that didn't matter. So
much. But it didn't matter. We got there. We made it work. It went. And it was magical. It was magical. And one of the things that Brian had said from the beginning is that, like, our job is to create the canvas, but Oakland sports fans are going to paint the picture, paint the masterpiece. And that day proved it. Is like, we didn't know, we've gotten a lot more developed in how to run a show and how to do choreography and how to like create an experience. Like that day we did our best, but we've just mostly turned it over to the fans and let them do the chants and let them do the flags. And there's just so much positive energy that it felt like the year of really hard work, the month of like ridiculous work. I mean, the month of May was like 20-hour days every single day, just to make sure that everything worked, all the stress, to get to opening day. Like, during opening day, it felt pretty magical, felt pretty worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that what Brian said, it's interesting. There has been this like almost element of magic in the Ballers, and you talk about the way that you didn't have Wi-Fi up until right before the first pitch, but everybody that showed up that day had the greatest day ever. I remember people coming in, getting the towels that were being given away to commemorate the first game, and the players were all standing there shaking people's hands, and just seeing the way that the fans reacted and like you said, letting them kind of paint the canvas. It felt magical, and the same thing happened this year, opening day again. Like, the geese flying over perfectly timed with the national anthem. I mentioned that in a previous episode, but like it was almost like you could tell something magic was going to happen that night in this season. And it's been a theme throughout with Raimondi Park and the Ballers and how special everything is just become and is still becoming. So as you get through opening night, you have Raimondi Park, and now you can kind of ideate on how to upgrade it and change it and let the park grow with you. Just how exciting is the prospects for the future, knowing that there is this park, it has been restored, we're having free community movie nights, we're having, Little League championships and high school tournaments like we often talk about, and we're giving this park back to the community, and we now have a 10-year license extension too. I mean, just how optimistic are you about the future and all the exciting things that we can do with Raimondi Park now that all this stuff has happened?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about making the determination to go for the Raimondi Park is it gave us a forever home right away. Like we were thinking that we were gonna have a temporary home and then eventually find a forever home. And we compressed the process of doing a forever home. At some point in time, we thought in our mind our challenge was let's build a ballpark before that other team builds a ballpark. And it's like we built it so much faster that it didn't even become like a any kind of thing that we could talk about as like a rallying cry or whatever. But now we have our forever home, and we love where we are in the Prescott neighborhood in West Oakland. There's a lot of energy and momentum of that in that neighborhood. We have a great relationship with our neighbors. They hang Ballers banners outside of their windows and watch games from from their balcony, and it's exciting. And the first year was a 1-year pilot. We did all of that, everything that we described, kind of as a proof of concept. And then obviously the city, the neighborhood, we all thought it went really well, and now we have a 10 years license. And we can just keep building. And I've said this before, but like it used to be, when baseball was America's pastime, it was the number one sport in the country. It was played in parks that look a lot more like Raimondi Park than they now, and these like, Disneyland type, multi-billion-dollar complexes that are getting built now. They were played much more in neighborhoods that are like the Prescott and West Oakland, Wrigleyville in Chicago, and Fenway. Like those are like urban areas, like the walkable stadiums. Like that's when baseball was at its best. And so kind of to some extent we're going back to the going back to the future and bringing back that kind of authentic community-centric baseball. And then we expect to grow with the community over time. Like, right now we have, 4,000 seats. We sell out some games. We don't sell out them all. Maybe next season we'll sell out them all. And once we sell out all the seats, we'll do what they used to do, which is bring in more seats. And that's how these things used to be built. Like I've said this analogy before, but like everybody thinks of Wrigley Field and the iconic ivy-colored wall. They played baseball in Wrigley for 10 years before there was a brick wall, and it was another 10 years before ivy grew up on it. Like these things that become iconic, feel immutable, actually get built up over time. And that's what we're doing at Raimondi, and we're going to be there for 10 years, 100 years, forever.
Yeah. And then, Bryan, before you wrap us up, because we're at time here, but I just want to show, I would be remiss if I didn't show this. This is one of the pictures that Paul sent me today. There's the sign. And then if you look over his shoulder, you can actually see the sign right there, which is pretty fun to see how far everything has come. Bryan, your closing thoughts, no pressure, on this incredible feature on the Bees Biz Live edition of Raimondi Park and the choosing of the ballpark and everything it has become.
I think that it is a place where people, and this is what we want to continue to replicate and build and get out to more and more people. I think that the whole purpose of a ballpark like this is to facilitate the building of community and like live interactions between people, like true human connections. We're all on our phones, right? Like all the time. And we don't have, there's not that many opportunities where we've often left offices and we're in like Zoom meetings instead of offices. We don't really get to connect with people. And so what we think the ballpark is, it's an antidote to the challenges that society faces today. And it's like a place that you just actually get to connect with other people, and you have it, and it's diverse people that you might not necessarily have that much in common with. You might not know them, but suddenly you've formed a community. And so the whole purpose of the Ballers experiment is to just give a connective point to the community to rally around. That's why this. That's why we want to keep growing it.
I quoted Paul earlier. I'll quote you, Bryan. I love the way you put it when you said that the goal of this team is to bring diverse communities together for shared joy. And that's what we're doing with the ballpark at Raimondi Park, bringing people together, hosting these block parties that baseball games break out at, and bringing people together, diverse communities together for shared joy. So we'll end with that on this edition of Bees Biz Live. This might be one of our last look back episodes because we have a lot of current things happening and we want to dive into the actual business of building and maintaining and sustaining the Oakland Ballers. We'll dive into those in future episodes. Thank you everyone for watching and joining us. And again, prayers up for Coach Beam. Hopefully he's okay. We all love you, Coach Beam, and all of our friends at Laney. Have a good one.